Never in human history have we ever faced a wilder situation than the one we're in now. And we focused on Iowa because it's the ground zero. Iowa is the most biologically altered state in North America. We have transformed 98% of that landmass for human usage. What we've done to the landscape is pretty much broken it up into pieces. We put roads across it. A lot of things can't cross those roads, and if they do, some of them get hit and killed or whatever, but we've also eliminated the species that didn't survive in that altered landscape.
Things are moving constantly in nature, and to the degree that we humans disrupt that movement, we're creating a severe problem in the natural world. So one very practical way to think about and study that is to look at every bridge and every culvert as a potential wildlife crossing. Animals have to move, just like us. We build highways to move. We create bike trails through natural areas. We create stony paths like this one so we can hike. Animals need their own paths, their own corridors to move around. How can we rethink our interaction with those animals and their needs so that they're getting the crossings they have to move around in their world just as freely as we can move around in our world?
And so we're wanting people to go out and help us identify where things are and how they're trying to move across that landscape. And so a lot of people, notice where the deer are. You'll see pieces of the car or dead deer or wherever, but those are saying that's not the only wildlife using that. That's saying there's some reason that they're getting funneled into these areas. And we need to identify those, and we wanted to start out here on a very local level.
So we've come up with a technique for going out to any culvert, whether it's a 12-inch culvert under a field entrance or a 48-inch box culvert under a road that's been recently rebuilt, or a small county bridge that is made of concrete or with guardrails along it, and come up with a rating for that. And that rating tells us the overall quality of that particular crossing point. We're looking for volunteers who are willing to go out to those potential crossing points, all those culverts and bridges, and take a checklist and evaluate them for several categories of animals and animal sizes and say, well, it's great for fish, but not deer and raccoons. It's great for flying insects, but not ground insects. So what would you do as a volunteer? Well, I would think that this would be a lot of fun. You'd have an organizer for a particular county or a fairly small area, and that organizer would break up that area into smaller units for you and someone else to go out and find the bridges, find those culverts, and take a sheet of paper or do direct entry into the internet, either one, and rate each one of those. It'd take you probably 5 minutes at each stop to accomplish that. So you'd be volunteering your gas and your time. You'd be observing things that maybe you hadn't thought about before, and that would make you a keener observer of nature. Certainly of this idea of connections across the landscape and where those connections exist and don't exist and how good they are.
It seems so monumental to talk about doing this in the Mississippi River Watershed, 32 states. But in another way, it starts where you are. And we're hoping, with your involvement, that not only will you be doing this on a personal basis, but you'll be adding to this collective consciousness about what is taking place where you live. And think of the part that you can play in changing the lives of others out there, other things, other beings. We don't get that opportunity too often.